The Tao of Self-Confidence, Episode 777. Welcome to the Tao of Self-Confidence, where I share stories of amazing women who have discovered their inner journey to self-confidence. Visit our website at thetaoofselfconfidence.com. Your inner journey to self-confidence awaits. Well, hello, friend. Welcome to the Tao of Self-Confidence, where I share stories of amazing women who have discovered their inner journey to self-confidence. I'm your host today, Sheena Yapchian, and today I have a phenomenal lady on the show today. She is known as the Financial Hype Woman, and I'm really excited to have her on and share her story with us today on self-confidence. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Berna Anat. Berna, how are you today? Maybe you can fill in a little bit more about yourself to the listeners.
Yes, thank you so much, Sheena, for having me. I'm super excited. I'm doing great. I had my morning smoothie. I was chewing an English muffin right before this, so I feel fueled. But my name is Berna, and my tagline is I'm the Financial Hype Woman, which basically means I create things on the internet to teach people about money in a way that isn't boring or horrible, usually. And Hype Woman because I really believe, the reason I got into personal finance in general is because I believe that we need more hype, more happiness, more enthusiasm, more celebration when we talk about money, because money as a topic, especially in immigrant families and Asian American immigrant families, it tends to be a very taboo topic. There's a lot of shame, a lot of quietness, a lot of silence around money. And me naming myself a financial hype woman kind of breaks the silence on that and shakes things up. And I'm a very shaky, kind of spazzy, cheerleadery person anyway. So I figured I'd use those powers for good and teach people about money.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. And Berna, what's your cultural background?
I am Filipino American, so both of my parents are from the Philippines. My mom is from Davao, which is on Mindanao, one of the southern islands, and my dad is from Luzon, from the Manila area. And people see me, they're usually like, you're not full anything. It's like lots of opinions, but full Filipino.
Thanks for sharing that. And what'd be your favorite self-confidence quote?
My favorite self-confidence quote actually is, I believe it's a line from a Stephen King book. The line is, "Go then, there are other worlds than these. Go then, there are other worlds than these." So I think a lot of confidence comes from the idea that you shouldn't, or ideally, you don't want to put sort of all your confidence eggs or everything that you lay your confidence on in one thing. I think of the fact that I developed a lot of my self-confidence in elementary school and middle school, as a lot of us did. Very kind of rough times to be developing your self-confidence, but something that gave me a lot of confidence early on in my life was knowing, we're at school all day long and there are not nice people there. There are people trying to tear down your self-confidence. And I remember a big source of my confidence at school was the fact that I knew that school wasn't my life. And actually growing up, I was a professional Tahitian and hula dancer. So that took over the whole other half of my life. And it oddly gave me a great amount of self-confidence to know that as much as maybe our work lives or our school lives or our careers are one big area of confidence in our life, to have your foot firmly somewhere else makes the stakes a lot lower and makes you feel like your life is sort of fulfilled and rounded out in that way. So the quote, "Go then, there are other worlds than these," reminds me to not take any one world in my life too seriously and to make sure that my self-worth is spread out amongst a lot of things so that when the bottom falls out of one, I feel confident enough to pick myself back up and kind of fill myself with everything else going on in the other worlds.
Thanks for sharing that great quote. And I like how you mentioned that because especially as Asian women, we feel like we can only live one way, but really, there's so many other ways to live our life. And, we can tap into not just one, but, as many as we want if we choose to, right? So I really like that you mentioned that. And in your own words, how do you define self-confidence?
I would define self-confidence as the little sort of lit up gummy gem in the very core of you that is consistent no matter what happens in your life and no matter who tries to cut you down, no matter what words or actions are thrown at you throughout the day. There's that sort of like gushy, lit up gem in the very core. And when I talk about it, I'm like pointing in my sort of guttural rib area. Self-confidence comes from that place and knowing that it is sort of inextinguishable. It persists no matter what's happening. So the way that I think of it is, if you've ever seen the Disney movie Aladdin, there is the scene where Aladdin and Apu, his little monkey friend, are in the forbidden tiger chamber cave thing, and they're looking for a treasure, and they come upon this like pinkish red ruby gem, and it's glowing and it's fuchsia and it's like beautiful and untouchable. And for some reason, when I think about like where my self-confidence comes from, I always imagine that weird little Disney gem image. And it's something that I literally like, I like put it on a vision board and I keep it in my brain at all times, just to understand that my confidence comes from a place that it's even like what's happening in that gem and in that light is beyond my own self-doubts too. So even the thoughts that come into my own head of just like, you're not cut out for this, like here comes the imposter syndrome. They don't think that you're very smart. You're not worth that much money. There's this feeling that even if those voices are revolving around my brain, there's a gem still in my gut that knows better. And it feels like a well of energy that I can always pull from. Sometimes it's not as bright as other days, but it is a well of energy that I always pull from and I depend on. And that's where it comes from.
Awesome, and thanks for sharing that great definition. And Berna, what was your life like before your discovery of self-confidence?
Oh, goodness. I would say that I've been a pretty self-confident person from when I was young, but that self-confidence has definitely wavered up and down. So I think I started off in life very self-confident. I'm the youngest of 4 siblings and I'm the youngest girl. And so in that kind of situation, I think a lot of attention is put on the youngest girl. So I was brought up in a lot of love and support, and that wavered though when I got to, for example, graduated from college and I went into what I thought was my dream job. I thought I wanted to be the teen magazine editor of the universe. And I was working at a teen magazine in New York City right after graduation. And my self-confidence really wavered because I was suddenly inside of this dream that I had thought about for so long. And of course, once I got there, the imposter syndrome got there too and was like, well, this is really early on in your career. Do you even deserve this? Like, this is an amazing job. Are you the right person for it? Have you worked that hard to get here? I'm not sure. And then I was surrounded by also very smart, quick-witted, super brilliant women who I was like, I don't know if I measure up to these people. And that's when my sort of self-confidence wavered. And in those moments where I tried to pick myself back up is when I sort of thought of that quote that I was talking about earlier, go then, there are other worlds than these. I got confidence from my success in other parts of my life that weren't my career. So I started building friendships that really fulfilled me. I started dancing a lot. I was doing a lot of dance classes while I was working this really hard job. And the confidence from those other places made me feel like the stakes in my work life, where my confidence was really low, those stakes weren't as high anymore. And so being able to balance those things out with other parts of my life helped a lot. And it comes in waves. I mean, I would say right now I'm in a place of not the highest self-confidence in my life because I'm a new entrepreneur and I'm doing this full time and all my, income and my career kind of structure depends on me and my brain, which is full of self-doubts and, kind of changes from day to day. But I tried to, again, pull from that well of like, well, I'm here. It got me like this light got me somewhere and I'm going to keep pulling at it and tugging at it and also understand that the waves that's sort of part of the self-confidence. Like self-confidence isn't like a mountain line that just goes up and up and up and up and stays there. It's a wave. It's a roller coaster. So I guess understanding that the waves are part of the ride of self-confidence.
Thanks for sharing that. And I like how you mentioned, getting success from other parts of your life, because, when we're successful in one thing, we can use that same process to be successful in other parts of our life, right? And I think it's a great reminder to realize, like, you're not a failure in all parts of your life. You were able to succeed at something. And just because you start something new, it's a little scary sometimes because when you're new and you see people around you who've been doing that same job for like 3-4 years, it does feel like, you feel like you're not worthy enough, but you have to realize like their story isn't the same as your story. And, you were hired for a reason because you have something to bring to the table. And I'm glad that because you're able to find parts in your life that was successful, you can transfer it out. And, because of that, what's your life been like now?
So because of being able to transfer my confidence in different parts of my life, sometimes I feel like an octopus, especially in my entrepreneurial life. I'm focused on personal finance and teaching women, especially young women of color, about personal finance. But I'm doing that in so many different ways. I'm speaking, I'm making videos, I make online courses, I do social media stuff, I write. And so in a way, you can say that my confidence is split up in like 6 to 8 different places, with the sort of middle, if you imagine the octopus, like all those things are different tentacles. The middle, the head of the octopus is me and my belief in personal finance. So it's a little scary because it feels like these tentacles are moving all the time and I'm juggling things all the time. And when one thing falls through, another thing rises up. And then overall, I'm like sometimes having all those tentacles can be a little stressful, and having my confidence and identity kind of portioned out into so many places feels a little like, So where I'm at right now is trying to, in my career at least, hone my personal finance powers into a smaller handful of things. I feel a little spread out, a little spread thin. And when you're spread thin, you're sort of doing 20% work in a bunch of different places as opposed to being solid in a few. So I'm trying really hard to distill down the different tentacles, figure out what are the things I'm really passionate about, and also what fulfill my personal and financial goals. Because as a personal finance creator, I need to be able to admit out loud, like, I love money and I want to make a lot of it and I want that money to do things for me. So it's balancing out like the things that I love, the things that fill my financial goals, and not spreading myself too thin, because then I think there's a point at which self-confidence feels over-distributed and your identity feels over-distributed, and I need a little bit of reining in. That's where I'm at.
Thanks for sharing that. I'm glad you're able to share that, right? I mean, we have to do things that work for us, that help us to become, like 100%, be able to serve people the right way, because if not, like, people can see through that. And the more we work on ourselves, the more we can find what works for us, what helps us, what can help others, all in that same process. So I'm really glad you're able to mention that. And to the woman who's listening to your episode, she may be in her own journey to self-confidence. What would be that one tip you would give to her?
I would say this is a tip that I actually give to a lot of high schoolers and college students when they're trying to figure out what their passion is, like how they can get noticed in the world in terms of their career or things that they create. I would say to this woman to get in touch with your teenage self or your younger self, because they knew at the core, like before they understood what fits in the corporate world, what fits in the career world, they knew what like your weird thing was. Like, what is your kind of weird, feels very specifically you thing that makes you happy in a way that like you don't necessarily want to put it on social media, or you don't necessarily need to like build a brand around it, but what's that like weird routine or funky thing or like deep research rabbit hole that makes you super happy? And to incorporate that into your morning routine. So for me, I really love scary stories. I really love ghost stories. I really love haunted things. And so I try to incorporate that into somewhere in my day, if not in my morning, then in my evening, that I like listen to a scary stories podcast. I know that sounds really random, but it just reminds me that I'm a multifaceted person. And it really kind of scratches this very like base itch of myself that like, even if I'm trying to like blow up my career and be all these things, it reminds me that there's like, it matters to sort of feed the inner child in me too. And that's where a lot of my confidence comes from. Another thing is that I love to dance, and I love to like dance by myself in the mirror and like pretend I'm choreographing a music video to like a Saweetie song or something. And so I actually very rigidly incorporate like 1 or 2 dance parties in every morning, and it makes the rest of the day feel so much more playful, so much more fun. And there's like something like this, my inner child just feels taken care of first thing in the morning, and that just boosts my confidence for the rest of the day. I feel a little bit more glowy. I feel a little bit more like whatever happens that day, it's fine, because me and inner child me kicked it this morning and we feel good about it. So pay attention to her. She wants to do some weird stuff, and I think you should give her some time.
Thanks for sharing those great tips. And if our listeners wanted to get to know a little bit more about you and what you do and check out some of your work, is there any links or social media profiles we can connect with?
Yes, definitely come find me on Instagram. That is where I am the most obnoxious. My Instagram is HeyBerna, HeyBerna. I'm very active on there. And you can also catch my free newsletter at heyberna.com.
Thanks for sharing that. To our listeners, if you want to connect with Berna, you can also head on over to thetowofselfconfidence.com and search for Berna's name. Her show notes will pop up along with everything else that we talked about. And I really just want to thank Berna today for taking the time to share her story and tips with us on self-confidence. So thank you so much, Berna.
Thank you so much, Shana, for having me. I'm psyched to be able to reach out to my fellow people and get our self-confidence up. We need it.
Not a problem. It was really great having you on the show. And to our listeners, be on the lookout for another new episode of another amazing woman's journey to self-confidence, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye for now. Thank you for tuning in to another amazing episode of The Tao of Self-Confidence. Visit our website at thetowofselfconfidence.com to check out cool resources, blog articles, show recaps, and so much more. Your inner journey to self-confidence awaits.